Welcome everyone to the 2023 New Product Introductions Trends webinar. Today we've got some exciting information to share with you. Taking a step back, our firm has historically done benchmarking on an annual basis across our network of manufacturers and distributors out there to understand more about how they treat investments around new product innovation. So today we're going to do something different. We're going to share the findings of the benchmarking study that we just did, but we're going to do that in more of a roundtable discussion. So let's dive into some of the insights and research that we've uncovered. If you have any questions, feel free to post those in the chat section. We'll be taking Q&A at the end of this session here. So without further ado, let's dive in here. So the four key themes that we've teased out of some of the research and what you'll hear more about today from the broader team here at Dorn, it breaks down into these four sections. The first one is we're going to dive into the financial performance of NPIs, just give you some highline vitals as to what's going on across the board. Beyond that, we're going to take a look at really using innovation as a corporate strategy to establish competitive selling advantage when you're out there working with your end customers and your distributors. And the third topic is around what we're calling customer adoption. There's a lot of information that we're seeing with best-in-class manufacturers and distributors moving beyond commercialization into establishing customer adoption teams. So we're going to dive into that as our third topic. And the final topic here is really on channel alignment. If you're a manufacturer who's working with distributors as you go to market, there's a lot that needs to be done to realign your teams and your programs around arming the way in which distributors go to market today. So we'll dive into each one of these. Let's start with performance and budget here. So we had over 350 firms participate in this recent benchmarking study. This just gives you a little bit of a mix of who actually participated in it. Predominantly manufacturers, and then maybe about 20% was this unique business model of manufacturers who also have a distribution component to their business as well. And this is a growing trend that we're tracking in a separate study. But beyond that, the job function, a lot of the people that participated were executive leadership, from a sales function, from a product function. And then the range and size of revenue really was a wide mix here. But you can see we're getting some really big companies all the way down to firms that might be 100 to 50 million in top line revenue. So with this, some of the key insights on the vitals here. This was an interesting one because it asked the question, how many NPIs have you launched on an annual basis? And it looks at it from three different time periods. From 2019 and earlier is the first period. The second period is 2020 to 2022. And the third would be 2023 and beyond. And what you're seeing on the left side of your screen is that there's, if you average out kind of the growth here of NPIs per year, you can see that there was a 15.5% decline in the amount of NPIs that firms were launching from the years of 2020 through 2022. Now, a lot of that makes sense because there's been so much disruption in the market, especially with supply chain. Organizations were just simply trying to get their core goods to their end customers and to their distributor customers. So that makes sense. And what we're seeing a lot of companies self-report on now is that they're trying to get back up to that 2019 and be in earlier levels. So they're probably flat when you look at it here, maybe a little bit lower, which it says that they're starting to put more focus on NPIs, but it's kind of a slow start because you're already in Q1, Q2 of 2023 here. So interesting to see the decline and then back the rise. You're almost at a flat standpoint here. Similar in nature when you look at new product vitality. Now, for those of you that don't track this actively, new product vitality is basically what percentage of your new product introductions as a percentage of your revenue. So if you're a $100 million company and $10 million of your revenue is in, new product introductions, that would mean you have a 10% new product vitality rate. So that's what this is tracking here. And for manufacturers especially, this is a really important vital or metric to track, because it shows how far ahead you're staying ahead of your competition and what percentage of your revenue is coming from innovation, we'll say. So this one's tracking, similar pattern, right? In 2020 to 2022, MPV was down about 14%. But it's interesting to see the growth of 27% in 2023 and beyond. There's a lot of people in the study that see, hey, we're going to get more bullish about, making more investment on our new products. So MPV going up to 27% growth, that's a pretty big climb. So the next slide here is really around gross margin. When you look at new product introductions, historically, they've always been at a higher gross margin. That's one of the big reasons in pursuing them. But I think part of what surprised us here was just the amount of incremental gross margin that was self-reported here. I mean, you're talking 20 percentage points increase for a new product versus, say, a standard product. That's a big incremental gain from a margin standpoint. And I think the key thing here is that if you're getting an additional 20 percentage points in incremental gross margin, that's going to create this, effect to where you can continually reinvest in innovation in your business and in other areas of your business because you have that much more investment to play with. Yeah, and the next one here is really on when we asked the question around forecasted revenue growth. So when you look at your top line revenue, most of the people that participated in the survey were estimating anywhere from 1 to 10% top line revenue growth moving into 2023. And this is to be expected because there's a lot of markets that are going to be slowing in demand in Q3, Q4 of this year. But that still has not occurred in the first half of the year, and it may continue even in the second half. It just depends on the markets you play in. But this number didn't surprise us at all. I think the number next to it was probably a little bit more surprising. Is of that incremental growth in revenue, only 1 to 10% of that would be attributed to new product introductions, and we generally see this number being higher in previous years in which we've done this. So something's happening to where either the unit sales of NPIs are not there yet, or maybe it's going to get into 2023 and beyond where you're going to see a lot more growth of unit sales when it comes to NPIs. And the next slide here is on annual NPI budgets. So this was asking the question of what percentage of your revenue do you allocate to fund NPIs? And it's a good comparative metric, because if you're a small company that just can't keep up with the budgets of a larger company, it's just a good way to compare, hey, are we investing equally into innovation as some of the bigger companies are? And this number is about average from what we've seen in previous years as well. You've got about 3 to 10% in investment going into NPIs, 3 to 10% of your top line revenue, we'll say. And I think the bigger part that surprised us a little bit on this one, guys, was the NPI budget variance. I mean, there was, almost 50% of the audience who was not going to increase their NPI budget at all.
Correct.
I mean, that's truly alarming, because that means they are either pulling back on that entirely, or they just simply don't use that as a vehicle to grow their top line. And I think that's the part where, there's definitely some more opportunity to tease out of this research that we can share a little bit later. But the other half, we'll say, I mean, average across all these manufacturers, you're at about a 12.5% increase when you take into account some of the companies who are really investing heavily into NPIs. And the final slide we'll talk to in the first section here is really on when you look at the budget allocation across the stage gate process of doing new product introductions. We generally see the bookends, the first and the last stage of the process being the lowest in total investment when you combine it, and then usually the middle is a lot heavier or higher in investment here. So this didn't surprise us, but I think the part that we're going to see more and more of is the bookends getting higher, and this was actually starting to trend up from historic numbers that we've looked at. So it's saying that manufacturers and distributors, they're putting more investment into net new types of technology, or in the concept stage of trying to figure out what their customers are seeking. And then they're also putting more investment into the latter half, which would be the commercialization side of it, to say, how do we help these customers adopt these new technologies and new products? So they're pulling away a little bit of funding from the development stage and the production stage to put into those two bookends of the stage gate process. Great. So Jay, let's dive into innovation, how we could use a lot of this research to create great strategy.
No, it's a great point, James. And the data you shared is great, because it just kind of establishes what companies are starting to do with those dollars, right? And how they're allocating those dollars within their own business to attract new customers or even retain the ones they have.
Yeah.
So if we dive into innovation here, what we really want to talk about is a couple things. One is growth. Where is the growth historically coming from? And if you would have seen this chart a year ago, you would have seen new products significantly higher, if not the number one growth lever for innovation within companies. It's dropped to number 4 this year, which is most likely a sign of the conditions or the market conditions that we're in today.
Yeah.
Inventory, supply chain, disruptions occurring for a variety of areas, and new products may be taking a kind of a back seat today, right, in some ways. Market expansion, customer expansion, those are number 1 and 2 for this year. Not unexpected in some ways, considering where we are. But new products, I would expect this trend to reverse in subsequent years, to kind of go back up to that top as that primary or more significant growth lever for companies versus pricing, expansion, and markets, right? So right now we see as a little bit depressed. I would expect that to kind of come back as a new vehicle, or to come back as a new opportunity for companies.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, if you are heavy in new products, this is an opportunity for you, right? As companies look at other sources of innovation, and you are looking at product innovation, you can capture market gains, and we're going to talk about that in the next couple slides and how companies can do that.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, sounds great.
So then we talk about NPI capabilities, and this research study kind of looked at how companies viewed their own capabilities versus other competitors in their same space, right? And how they kind of view what they do and what they offer in the market. What's kind of stands out and is obvious in this data shows that 90% are effectively at market or near parity or below the market as far as how they perceive their position or their capabilities to their competitors. And that's alarming.
Yeah.
Right. I would not expect it to be 90%.
Yeah.
The 57% that we're showing, which is technically at parity or below, is a little bit concerning as well, because they're basically saying we're average, right? We're just run-of-the-mill average, and we kind of follow the tide of the market, which can be difficult. The 10%, though, that's interesting. Now, 10% of the respondents say our capabilities are better, right? So you take the last slide, product innovations, a little bit depressed right now. We have 10% that say, hey, we've got better capabilities than the market. Now, is that an opportunity for them to start stealing some share?
Yeah.
To say, hey, look, I've got capabilities. I think I'm stronger than my competitor. And I know that most aren't focusing on product right now. They might be focusing on other issues of their business. If I've got a strong product story with a strong customer base or strong market channel, I might have opportunity there. The one thing that I looked at in this data is we look at that much worse and somewhat worse. 24%, almost a quarter of all respondents said we are significantly worse than our competitors. And now whether they're okay with it or not, I don't know.
They must rely on relationships. Right?
They have to, or innovation is just completely outside of their wheelhouse. But that underperforming, or just, hey, or either they threw their hands up and they gave up, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's a big number. So if you start really breaking that down, that 66% in the middle are basically saying status quo, right? This is an opportunity for those 24% to move into that 66%, and an opportunity for those 10% to take incremental share. So if you're a large company and you have that innovation engine, this is a great opportunity. If you're a smaller company, it could be a challenge.
Yeah.
Right? It could be a challenge for you to break through. So something to think about when you start looking at where you are in this graphic and how you would view your capabilities versus your competitors.
Yeah, great points.
Yeah. So then we kind of move into real innovation versus line extension. And this was also alarming in some ways. So if you look at the graphic, and the data from our respondents shows that 88% of them are effectively saying that 70% of what innovation or new product that they develop is effectively line extension, is what they're saying, right? So the graphics represents what percentage is new to market, new product versus a line extension. And so 12% have zero, which is very low number. 1 to 10% is another 38%. So effectively 50% of your respondents have no or very little new market, new product versus in line extension.
Yeah.
So new to the market versus just, hey, I'm going to make another small version of this. I'm going to make a tweak to it. I'm going to, enhance it in some small way. So 10%, 50% of the respondents, 10% or less of their new product is actually new.
Wow.
Is what that's effectively saying.
So the rest is all assortment that they're going after.
Correct.
Wow.
They're going after what they know, and they're playing it safe. And I would argue that in today's market, playing it safe maybe isn't that safe.
No.
Right? That's the challenge, is you have this huge piece that is effectively just kind of, not really taking any market opportunity to gain share and win customers. Particularly if you lost customers during the last couple of years. This is a great opportunity to win them back. So that line extension versus new product is important. But again, as I said on the previous one, those big players are getting bigger. They're seizing that opportunity. They're going after the expanded assortment, but they're also going after new markets, new product, particularly the ones that have innovation kind of built into their DNA. Those smaller companies, the less kind of process orientated, the less innovation they've historically done, could be a challenge for them to continue to break through in this market. So we would argue, hey, this is an opportunity for you to relook at your innovation strategy, look at how your line extensions are versus your new product, and maybe see if there's some space that you can carve out for yourself in the market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Next, we move to technology. And this was another interesting dynamic that we wanted to share. So we've talked about IIoT in this firm, across the market for years now, at least 4 or 5 years, this has been a topic. AI, machine learning, and we wanted to look at what is the adoption? How has that been kind of adopted as a innovation lever over the last couple of years and certainly more recently? So on the left-hand side, you'll see that 56% of those in IoT have zero plans, zero innovation in this category. 71% have zero in AI or machine learning. I mean, that is a massive amount that have effectively said, we're just ignoring this whole segment, this whole opportunity. Now, IoT and AI and machine learning can come in a variety of forms. Now, you may have a variety of products that do or do not have the ability to incorporate this technology, even if it's 10% or 20% that might have the ability to incorporate this technology, even if it's for maintenance, performance, data analytics, and capturing usage, uptime, downtime, intervals of service and repair. Even if it's a small subsection of your offering, it can still provide a lot of value to those customers that use it. So this number of 59 and 70 or 56 and 71% ignoring it seems a little alarming to me. Even today, I would have expected that number to be a little bit lower. Yeah. And then you'll see there's a few at that 10%. Hey, we're starting to dabble in that. We're starting to look at IoT a little bit, not so much AI, which AI is still up and coming. So that doesn't necessarily surprise me in the industrials. Then you get this lull, and then you get others that say, hey, you know what? We're moving. We're going to get on that. It might be slow. We might have to baby step our way into that, but we are moving in that direction. And 12% have said, hey, more than 50% of our offering is going to have that. So another great insight, I think. And I think the last section here really kind of talks about business model design versus value creation. And so as the data showed, we see a lot of companies in our survey results talking about the core and kind of sticking within this, hey, this is what we know. Product innovation's kind of reduced. We're looking at other factors to drive growth within our business. Maybe that's within their core, maybe that's within their adjacency. But this graphic really looks at the conventional growth levers that you have as a firm And then understanding from an innovation perspective, where do you want to play?
Yeah.
Now, the reality is based on the data, we know that it's really crowded in the core because most are doing line extensions, as we saw. Some are looking at new products, so that new product versus line extension or adjacency space is lower. But that core and adjacency is pretty crowded. The opportunity for your firm, whether you're large or small, is most likely going to be in that transformational section. And what we mean by it doesn't have to be revolutionary or just so far outside of where your market is, but there is opportunity in that top right quadrant. What you will find is that while that would appear to take additional risk into your business because it tends to be of, maybe a little bit higher risk and it's not an established market, or it might be new, it's not proven, because it's not as crowded, the risk is actually lower to your business to get in there because you're not necessarily fighting a deep embedded base of customers with a new product or a new solution that may have significant headwinds.
Yeah.
So I would contend, or we would contend, that if you're looking at entering or moving into some transformational innovation areas, now would be that time. As your competitors might be looking more in that adjacent core, playing in that same mud might be a little harder to break through than maybe looking beyond that into that transformational space.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful point, Jay. And this is a great slide to kind of demonstrate, hey, where do we go on the chessboard, right? What do we invest in? But I think the motivator, if I'm a manufacturer out there, or even a distributor who's in this business, there are so many people pursuing assortment and breadth of offering. I mean, you're at 90+% of all NPIs that were launched are assortment based. I mean, you start getting all these big companies launching 90% of their products into assortment, like it's that much harder for you as a smaller or mid-size player out there to actually keep up with that. So they're basically coming for the fringes of your business and moving into what will be core eventually. So as a manufacturer or distributor, you've got to figure out, hey, where are we going to make investments to create differentiation in our business using innovation, and then protect the assortment that we do have and the mind share that we do have with our end customers and with our distributor customers.
Right.
So that's a big motivator if you're out there looking at that, because everyone's going for assortment today.
Yeah, and I would kind of, depending on your size of your firm, I would start plotting out a strategy that looks at balancing, do I want to go head to head with a larger firm that, again, is kind of taking the fringe of that market, or do I have opportunity to create my own space, my own lane in this, what we're calling transformational section, that can give you some market growth while, companies start fighting for the soup in the middle.
Yeah, no, great insights. Awesome. So let's dive into section 3 around customer adoption.
Yeah. So Jay, thank you. One thing that I found so insightful when we did this is when you brought up 90% of NPIs are not establishing a competitive advantage, right? Like, why? That's a huge number.
Yeah,
and it's problematic because how much money and time and energy it takes to bring a product to market just to be a parity. So in this section, what we wanted to talk about is looking at your stage gate process and try to rethink it, right? Put some accountability through your NPI process, and how do you develop that adoption team, right? Because too often we see this siloed approach. So to dive in, we asked a very simple question. Who is responsible for the success of your NPI?
It's a big question.
Right.
I don't think I've ever gotten a clear answer.
Some guy named Charlie Brown in the corner, right?
Yeah, Linus. He's our guy.
Yes.
Go talk to him.
We've all seen that.
So you look at it in 2 buckets, right? From financial performances and then what we were asking about adoption. And if you look at on the left side, financial performance, those are some promising numbers, right? 40% of our respondents said they have a cross-functional approach. And that's critical. You have to have cross-function in this to start a adoption team. Otherwise, if you don't, you get this siloed approach where I say, hey, I own this piece of the stage gate. Boom, thank God it's over because it's no longer my responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And it goes to someone else and they pass it down the line.
Yep.
And then if you look to the right, we say, who's responsible for accountability or adoption? And it's like, oh, sales.
Sales, yeah.
50%. Get out there and place that product. Make a sell, right? And in that manner, that's very legacy thinking
Correct.
because it's way more complex now. And so if you overburden your sales team, wash your hands of the process, you're going to see some 90% NPIs are underperforming. You're not setting that advantage. And we know through research that 50% of NPIs don't even hit their revenue targets, right?
Wow.
There are some gaps here. And we feel part of that is we have to set the stage for accountability. And you have to have some skin in the game. Who is responsible for that financial impact and performance of the NPI? So moving to the next question, we asked, who is involved in each and every process in the stage gate? And we meant it from very beginning all the way through commercialization. And you'll see, look, 80% of product management involved in every step. I would argue maybe it should be 100%, but 80% is a pretty good number. They own it. They own the go-to-market. They own the research. They're in charge of everything, right? But look what else we discovered. If you just hone in on sales, marketing, and even leadership, 30% of the time, they're not involved in a step. And that is a critical gap right there. Because in today's market, if you do not have everyone representative from start to beginning, you're going to, again, have breakdowns in your NPI. So 70% of the time, that's great, but you really want to build that team that's well representative and they have equal responsibility all the way through because it's not just a single section. The other part that's so important for why you need this, if you think through the modern buyer journey. So who is your customer today, right? And how do they work? And so on the next slide, think about the self-serve customer. And John, I know you have a lot of experience with this. They got to be the center of your universe. You know why? They're less loyal. They're impatient. They want to be independent. So they're going to do as much soul searching information gathering on their own as they can. They don't want to pick up the phone. They don't want to take your phone call. The last thing in the world they want to do is actually have to call you. So if they can do as much of it on their own, they are. And what that gives you is a more informed customer who's ready to make a transaction. And if you make that transaction difficult on them, they're going to jump. They'll go to somewhere else. Right? So you have to put together a team and think of it as, hey, what does this self-serve customer look like today? And how do I map my adoption team to their needs? So if you go to the next slide and you visualize, hey, look how complex this is. Like the modern buyer journey is so complex that you really need a robust adoption team that can play in that area. So if we look at adoption as the true success, in market, really you have to think through how people are buying today. How do you communicate with them? How do you arm your sales team? How do you go to that market? And you got to say, hey, sales, you can't just get out there and sell now, right? You got to be an equal opportunist. Marketing, product, customer service, they all need to have skin in that game. And so that's where lastly, this adoption team really comes in, because once you build the adoption team, you say, hey, we are responsible for the revenue of this. We are responsible for the financial performance. Then we say, we're not thinking of this through our commercialization effort. Like it can be great. Your stage gate can be on time and under budget. But if you do not get that adoption, you're not going to get the success. So if you start with that adoption team, you'll see an increase in your NPI performance. And hopefully you'll start seeing an uptick in your competitive advantage.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating, Jim. That number surprised me. Of 50% the firms out there believe that sales is fully accountable and responsible for customer adoption of new technology. And we work with a lot of sales teams and professionals, and there is so much changing with the way in which sales teams operate today. You've got a lot of stuff going to inside sales, digital selling. Some are fully aligned with marketing, other teams are not. So there's just so much changing there. For them to be responsible for the number and then also the adoption of new technology, which in some cases may be transformational, that's a really big ask to put on one single team. So the idea of a adoption team, I think is spot on, right? With what we've been seeing with top performers of rounding out that responsibility across multiple teams and getting them to really think end user back into, why do they want this technology? How's it going to help their business? And how do we help them adopt this new technology? So great insights.
Yeah, I would say if you want to start thinking of your sales team, the wrinkle I'd add is their closers, right?
That's
Make
great.
it
Great
easy
point.
for them to close.
Yeah.
They are responsible for that placement, but the burden shouldn't be A to Z.
Yeah.
So give them the tools and resources and the opportunity to close that deal, and they will.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well said. Awesome. So moving on to the next section, channel alignment. John.
Yeah, thanks. There's some great insights, I think, especially I just kind of want to add on to what Jim was just talking about in terms of, you've got a team that is responsible for it, but not accountable for it. And putting your accountability in your sales team exclusively is probably not a winning combination to new product introduction success. So as we dive into this section, we're going to really cover some of the trends. I love this slide. This is the level of influence in terms of how they drive NPIs. So this is our research, and you can see distributor field sales is still impactful. But what's really growing quickly is the e-commerce and digital selling teams. How you get new product information through the channel to the end customer is really changing. We predict on our survey that number 2 position will become number 1 within the next year or two. Account managers, as Jim said, are still really important, but you got to set them up as closers. You got to drive the information and the new product introduction through these other channels. And if you look at the bottom, distributor events are still important, especially coming out of the pandemic where everybody had a gap in going to events. Right now, you're seeing a lot more people going to events. We predict that's going to be more short term. People don't have time to go to events. They don't have the resources to service them. We think that long-term videos and direct interaction, direct communication on your new products is going to be critical for you to get them launched inside the channel. As we go into the next slide, I think this is a really important visual, one that we've really researched over the last decade at Dorn. This goes right back to what Jim was talking about, the reliance on the account manager or the person to sell to the end user. So if you're looking at this pre-pandemic, it was a very structured process where somebody would set a plan, they would deliver it to their branches from a distributor perspective. It would go to the account manager, and the account manager would go out along with the manufacturer reps and the manufacturer account manager to talk to the end customer. So they were primarily responsible for driving new product introductions. The traditional lunch and learns, come into the branch for training, we'll do training on site. It was more of a one-way relationship. Today, it's a back and forth relationship. The end customer is in control. They want to consume on their own time, on their own schedule, new product introductions. They want to understand what solution it delivers, which I think is really a key change. But a lot of the clients we work with, right, guys, are still thinking it's in the black phase here, but it's a two-way conversation. So you really got to take that into consideration when it comes to coming up with a proper NPI plan. On the next slide, we're really going to dive into the gaps. This one's fascinating. For the last 10 years, we have been doing extensive research with distributors and their end customers. So if you're looking at this, the associates, these are the sales-facing associates at a distributor, and what the customer says. So this is what they value. So why do you buy from distribution? And you can see some really big gaps here. The traditional distributor still views e-commerce and digital as a very, what I would call, what's the proper term, James? A reason that they're not buying from you today.
Yeah.
And the customer really is valuing that digital communication. And you can see that account managers are still important, but they're less important to the customer today than they were a decade ago. So that's where you really got to get into communication programs to help close that gap and make your account managers the closers. So as we go into the next slide, this is, and James talked about this earlier, this is the evolution of the distributor selling team. There's the same 10 people above and the same 10 people below. So today, smart distributors and manufacturers are making a choice to move from all outside, some inside, very little digital support, to a combination of outside closers, inside teams that help grow that business, and digital resources so the self-service customer can interface with you on their schedule, on their time frame. As we move forward, NPIs are going to need extensive buyer journey and extensive communication plans and how-to videos on how to install. It's going to be tough for you to get 20 customers to show up at a distributor to eat pizza, to walk through a product demonstration. Every year that goes by, that's going to be tougher and tougher to get. You're going to have to find new ways to communicate and drive new product introductions instead of new product escapes with your team.
John, what do you mean by new product escapes? You might need to expand on that one.
Well, we used to have a joke when I was in distribution. We didn't launch new products, we let them escape. Because frankly, distributors aren't real good at delivering new product information, because we were thinking about it as this, it's the salesperson's responsibility. Now, distributors are getting much better at that, but I think it starts with that partnership between a manufacturer and a distributor to both be driving information to the end customer today.
No, that's well said, John. I think today, if you're a manufacturer investing millions of dollars in innovation, you have to think that through all the way across that modern buyer journey. And distribution is a critical part of that, of being able to enable distribution teams with the right programs. But in order to do that, you have to understand kind of what you're outlining here, that the teams, the selling teams at distribution, they're going to look very different tomorrow than they do today. And they're already changing dramatically. So being able to give them the right assets, the right resources to support the training, and being able to give them kind of the turnkey programs that they can go into the market and build demand around this new innovation. The manufacturer has to do more of that work today to make sure that the distributor has exactly what they need, because they are so under-resourced in general with distribution, with all these changes, that they're not going to be the ones creating these programs. It's got to be taken on by the manufacturer and brought to the distributor in conjunction with some joint planning. But the bulk of that work has to be done by the manufacturer, right?
Yes, absolutely.
No, so great insights, John. So from here, everyone, if you're a manufacturer or a distributor out there and you're looking across your performance from an NPI standpoint, you're saying, you know what, I think we can do better as a firm, or we need to develop a new strategy here on how we're going to create more competitive advantage around innovation. This is a great service that our firm offers. It's an NPI assessment. We can come in, help evaluate your teams, help evaluate the processes and the performance of what you've been seeing from an innovation standpoint, and give you a gap analysis as to where you might have gaps, where you can make improvements. We can give you an innovation roadmap of where you could go from an investment standpoint, and we can help you action that across your commercial teams through some commercial team alignment programs and whatnot. This is a great service if you are questioning if you can get more performance out of your teams. This is an excellent option that you have If you're interested, just feel free to reach out to us and we'll help you understand more information around this service. So to summarize the key points for what we've shared today, really from a performance and vitals standpoint, NPIs went down a lot in 2020 through 2022, but they ramped back up in 2023 and are continuing to ramp up. They may not be ramping up to levels that are, hard for other manufacturers and distributors out there to outcompete. So if you're considering an innovation strategy and getting more bullish in this area, it is an opportune time to dive into the market today, establish your strategy, and start to outcompete your competitors and even leapfrog them, get to that transformational state and create some competitive differentiation. The second part is on the innovation. Great opportunity to really invest heavily here. And the third part is on customer adoption. If you're still looking at the world through either launching a product and forgetting about it, or introducing your product through the resources of distribution and leaving the responsibility on them, there's a new way in which you have to go to market for innovation. It starts with understanding what the modern buyer journey is and building a customer adoption team that aligns all of your sales, marketing, digital, inside selling teams around helping end users understand why in which they need your solution and why they should switch to it today from what they're currently using. And the final segment here is really on channel alignment. If you're a manufacturer out there who sells through the channel as part of your go-to-market, you need to understand what the modern selling team looks like at a distribution standpoint, and you need to be able to provide them with the right programs that are turnkey in nature to help their teams enable those programs and get you the market share you're looking to gain. So from here, guys, we'll open this up to Q&A and some discussion around some of the insights that were shared here and even some of the learnings that we presented. Let's dive into Q&A. Jay, do you want to tackle that one?
IIoT.
Ooh, you got it. Wow.
Yeah, so IIoT, for those that we may have glossed over a little too high, industrial Internet of Things, right? The connectivity of industrial devices in production, maintenance, and then kind of bringing that back to a centralized database or centralized system for monitoring or reporting or data analytics. So
Yeah.
IoT is the consumer version or the more non-industrial version. IIoT is the quote industrial version of that technology or that system that connects your plants around your machine around the plants as well as equipment from plant to plant.
Yeah.
Jay, I was so surprised when we did that, and when we did the survey, because you think about the importance of IoT, a lot of it's in consumables and repeatability of your business, right?
Right.
So if you are someone who has a parts business or a consumable business or an opportunity to drive that subscription model or whatever it may be, even going down the path of researching of, is this a viable option for our business moving forward, just to see total abandonment right now. I didn't expect that to be the case.
Not in 2023, maybe 2018. Yeah, that would have looked more appropriate. Today, I would have expected that most industrial companies, or certainly our survey respondents of the 350 plus of them, would have said, hey, we're looking at it in some form, right? Some capacity. They might be in their infancy. They might be moderately engaged with it. They've had a couple research projects associated with technology, even if it's AI, artificial intelligence, or machine learning. There's some work that's been done. In this case, it shows that, hey, it's not even on our radar.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think we're lucky enough to have 350 respondents of the wrong category completely, right?
Yeah.
They all make hammers, right?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where, hey, if you're using high-speed CNC tool cutting, like they're putting chips in those that are connecting to cloud types of applications. So using that for monitoring and performance improvements and productivity gains, like if you can put it in a tool, I think you can put it in a lot of stuff, right? And be able to add value to an end user's operation. Now, all products may not be applicable for
Correct.
this smart technology, but it's definitely something to explore and try and take some investment to actually get out there and learn as to where there could be new market opportunities here.
Correct. And I think companies that lead the market in this type of service have kind of divided it into the connectivity and the smart connectivity of the device, of the thing,
Yeah.
to the service elements of the data and the information you collect from it, right? So the value of connectivity is of high value for many manufacturers, or certainly industrial companies. But the use of the data and what the data tells them is of high value.
Yeah.
Meaning, are we efficient? Are we productive in this line? Do I see variations in my plant at different times of year, different seasons, depending on, a variety of factors? And so that allows them to kind of redesign, in many cases, just how they manufacture and how they go to market, and then what they can do with their capabilities and investments to improve that. So I would divide, the leading companies really divide it into the connectivity as well as the value of subscription-based data, as an example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a great point. Yeah, I've got another question
Yeah.
here for the group. It's a distributor / manufacturer, and they're trying to understand more about how do you balance the teams if they are building the products themselves, but also launching them through their distribution side of the business. What does that look like from a team dynamic standpoint? So, Jim, I'll throw this one to you. I mean, that's when you're talking about an adoption team, like what does that look like when you start with mixing the teams together across that hybrid business model?
Yeah, I think that's a really fascinating wrinkle, of like how do you go through it? Now, if you go back on just the very basic, you want to be well representative in the adoption team, right? Because you want each function to know what's going on, have that drive, and see it all the way through to the market. Now, when you get into the hybrid approach of bringing in distribution or working with agents or having a direct team, that's when collaboration is critical.
Yeah.
And the sooner you can bring them in, the better. Even in getting back, I mean, it's cheap VOC, right?
Yeah.
If you're partnering through your distribution, through their DSRs, if you're working with agent groups, you're saying, here's what we're headed. Can you help us validate the market need for it? And can you help us find the wrinkle and the innovation that we need, even if it's early? What we've seen traditionally is people try to keep it very close. They don't want anyone to know where they're bringing to market because of competition. Makes total sense. But once you feel like you've gotten down the process enough and you're there, start that collaborative motion well before you get into the last mile of commercialization into market, so you can properly prepare your target. So I would say that transparency and collaboration as soon as possible.
No, that's great. Yeah. I've got another one in here, Jay, that you might be able to feel that's around voice of customer. So
Sure.
where do we really start when it comes to identifying what innovation is going to be most valued by our customer base?
Well, obviously it starts with, understanding your customer in a deeper way, understanding how they use your product. We talk about VOC, and VOC in many cases is this idea that you're going to go out and you're going to talk to your customer and ask them a series of questions and say,
Yeah.
What do you think about this? Or what do you think about that feature? And they're going to answer the questions the best that they can. More often than not, they don't necessarily understand all the elements of what the product can do for them or how they're even using it. In some cases, they're using it in a capacity for which it wasn't really intended or designed, right?
Yeah.
So now you're trying to build an innovation on top of something that wasn't really designed for. What I find is probably the most effective for a lot of companies out there is behavioral VOC, where you're just observing the use of understanding what are you specifically doing with this, or what is your specific issue. We talked years ago about innovation solving pain, right? Which is an interesting concept. How does innovation solve pain? If there's a problem, I'm going to make something that's going to make that problem go away, and then lo and behold, they buy my product. The challenge with that is that the customers are typically solving pain today in some form. Does your innovation solve it more efficiently, better, or easier than what they can do themselves without your innovation? Right? So in some cases, they might throw bodies,
Yep.
resources, people at it, right? We don't really have the automation within the system, so I'm going to put 2 people on this versus 1.
Yeah.
And that's a way of solving the pain of, hey, now your innovation may or may not eliminate that, second person or may make it more efficient. The challenge is are you really understanding, is that a better option for them than what they're currently doing, right? And because what they're currently doing works to some extent, right? It doesn't work as efficiently or better. And so I like the VOC a lot. I think that's really important. I think you need to talk to your customers often, frequently. I think you need to have different conversations with your customers at different groups. Sales brings a lot of information from the customer, right? And those conversations will look everything from customers unhappy, customers very happy, customer asked for these 5 things, customer didn't ask for that, customer, and then of course you get to the price discussion. But I think the conversations between your customer and your sales, customer and marketing, customer and product management, customer even within your back office teams, will go a long way in helping determine the innovation that will provide actual value.
Yeah. I guess to action that, like, how do you start with that? All right. Is it, a part of your team going out seeking input from a segment of customers? Like what's the way to get that started?
I think the best way to do that is get a cross-functional team, right? Set some, kind of guideposts of what you want to understand, what you want to learn, and then go out to the market. The first step is organize a team, understand who's going to, kind of work in conjunction or collaboratively together. Then go out and look at your customer base in cohorts. Right. Big customers, little customers, small, little use, heavy users, however you want to divide those segments or cohorts up, and then go out and have conversations. So you can either do that virtually, do that over the phone. You can do that through direct on-site visits. Any one of those methods can be okay, but you will need to get to some behavioral aspect of it to really kind of deeply understand that.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, super helpful. John, we still got time for a few more here. One for you. It's a distributor who's asking, how important is it for distributors to actually focus on new product introductions from a performance standpoint?
Well, James, I think it's as simple as that margin slide you showed. Although you may not get 20% more margin as a distributor, you're going to get significantly better margin on your new product introductions that you facilitate for a manufacturer, and also be able to be first mover, so to speak, first person to get the new product in with the customer. That's a barrier to exit for the customer. So I think it's critical. Some distributors I've worked for have had an NPI or a new product vitality goal that they've tried to set. I just think as a distributor, it's critical. It's a barrier to exit if you get a client using a new product, and it's also more margin, which are really the 2 hardest things in distribution. So that's why you really got to be hyper-focused on new product introductions, in my opinion.
I love both those reasons, John, the margin and kind of that stickiness of customers. In your experience, is it usually a corporate-led initiative at distributors who drive the level of effort to gain adoption around NPIs, or is it more of individual seller taking interest in trying to create some new opportunities within their market?
Well, I wish I could say it was corporate-led and well-organized. Oftentimes, it's a local person who takes ownership of it. But I think the more organized you are as a manufacturer, the more you can drive it from the corporate level and from the local level to win both from the top and from the bottom. And I think very few manufacturers do a good job of that at the distributor level. And those that do win more often. Yeah.
Well said, John. Well, that'll do it for today. Everyone, thank you for attending this year's 2023 NPI webinar. If you have any questions or if you want a copy of the research that we showed today, send us an email and we'll send you a full copy of the research. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, follow us on LinkedIn, social media. We post a lot of these insights in video format. And yeah, thank you for attending. Appreciate it, guys, for all the insights.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Great.